Hello, welcome to Real Breakthrough TV show with business TV show with your host Judy Jewett. I am so delighted to be here today, and we have a wonderful guest that I'm bringing on in just a minute, and I want to share a little bit about Herb Stevenson. He owns and is the owner, the CEO of Cleveland Consulting Group, Inc. He is a Gestalt executive coach. And being that he is the CEO of the group, he focuses on global organizations that recognize that business is more than a problem to be solved. He leads a Gestalt coaching consulting practice. He is a professional. He is on also professional staff faculty of the clinical organizational programs of postgraduate Gestalt Institute of Cleveland. That is a mouthful. But the point is, he is extremely gifted and intelligent and has dedicated his life, honestly, with the consulting group of bringing more empowerment and focus of understanding into Gestalt therapy. He is also, you've written also, well, I'll bring you on, Herb, and I have a lot of questions for you. So I'd like to welcome Herb in on the show today. Thank you, Herb, for joining us.
My pleasure, Judy, and it's good to see you, even though it's been a 9 year absence between us chatting. So, thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, thank you. And I also want to acknowledge that you are the founder of the Natural Passages Leadership Program for Men. You started this 20 years ago. You teach nature based spiritual workshops, and you founded the Healing Den program focused on teaching, presence, and energy healing.
Yes.
So that is phenomenal how you lead and work in the executive field and to bring about a lot of change there with businesses around the world. And also, then you do your spiritual work. So, tell us more about. You've also published books, have you not?
Years ago, I did some banking books, but the one is probably most uh, fitting for this is I wrote a book called Thoughts. It's actually, you can go on to Healing Den or herbstevenson.com and download it free. But it's basically saying our thoughts create our reality. It's something I wrote actually in 1996, and it's free. So if people would like to download it, they can have that. And it was the beginning of my own spiritual. I guess I'd say not journey so much, was awakening in the sense of realizing um, life was a lot more than um, white picket fence, house, a marriage, and a nice car and things of those nature. And so it was actually saying is, what's the stories am I telling in my own head? So
Which we do definitely tell stories in our own head. Today, we're going to talk about the executive presence. In the past, we know several decades, executive presence was focused on demeanor and dress. So, the presentation of the presence, we're really going to talk today about the recent COVID backlash of employees wanting to work where there is self empowerment, human connectivity, and what has happened to people leaving the organizations. So, could you share more about that with us?
um, yeah, because Judy, what happened was when I was going through business, I'm in my 70s now. So when I came out, presence was about dress for success, um, power language. All of these were to create an image of who you are, or what they would call an executive presence. What's happened in the last probably 20 years is there's been a complete shift, and it's been highlighted by COVID. And what COVID created was uh, three things. One, self-awareness for the average employee, self-awareness in the sense of everything got unraveled about what is our day-to-day plans. and habits, and suddenly we're thrust in being, I got to figure out how to work from home and also take care of my kids, possibly homeschool. And the first year was very painful. The interesting thing happened the next 2 years is people began to realize they could actually do all of those things. Now, some obviously didn't because those were the ones wanted to get the kids back to school. But a lot of my clients, executive clients, found out that they could actually have a relationship with their children, something they had not had. They got used to seeing them when they got home if it wasn't too late at night. And so this self-awareness led to a new thing called what I call internal authority, which basically means the employees realize they have the authority to choose what they want to do and how they want to be. And so this is why you're seeing this mass migration happening um, throughout the country, where people are saying is, if you're going to force me back to work, then I'm leaving. And you would never have heard that post-COVID. And so COVID opened the door of saying is, you have the right to choose and create the life you want. And in doing that, you're creating a sense of presence about who am I from the inside out versus who am I from the outside in. And that's a drastic shift. And we can see it in a variety of subtle places. For example, dress for success in the past, you wear a suit or certain types of things. Now, blue jeans are considered business casual, something that when I grew up, you just wouldn't have never done. So a whole lot of things have shifted, and it's creating difficulties. One of the clients or people I'm aware of up in Wisconsin, a large insurance company, realized that everybody was as productive, and in some cases more productive, by being remote and being home and being available with their kids, and they're happier. So they decided that 50% of their large campus would be repurposed into other uses outside the business, so that the core business would be shrunk in terms of assets or real estate by 50%. So the from a business point of view, and for those who don't know me, I've been doing this work for over 40 years around the world, working with executives on how to make these adjustments. So when you see something as drastic as we're going to change our footprint to less real estate, hard assets, repurpose it, and we're going to find a whole new way of working, is a completely changed. And I call it presence, because what's happening is people are becoming aware they have the right to be who they truly want to be.
You know, that is so true. People do have the right. And for a corporation to work in a corporation, an executive setting, I mean, that's really a big deal. You know, when you're up here changing, right? What is happening, and people are awakening, because I'm telling you, I've worked in corporations for 12 years, and it's it's about moving up the ladder. It's about being the way everybody else is being. You want everybody to like you, um, and you take on the persona of whatever that corporation is. And I can see what you're telling me, that COVID forced that to break down, to break away.
Yeah, and it shows up in other ways. So I'll give you an example of the city of Cleveland. The city of Cleveland was realized it needed to change. And as pre-COVID, just before COVID came in, they were beginning to realize they need to repurpose the city. And so instead of tons of office buildings, suddenly half of the downtown has been repurposed, especially over COVID, with everything is now apartments. And so there's 1,000 new units. They have a 90-some% occupancy rate, which is unbelievable for any type of rental properties. And there's a demand for another 1,000. And people are saying is, I want a community. I want to live in a downtown where I can walk. A lot of these people don't drive. All of these are massive, massive economic and social changes in our country, and which is basically saying, again, people are realizing I have a choice. I don't have to be what you've told me I'm supposed to be. And in the language I use about executive presence, it means giving one the right to be truly who they are versus to do what they have been told they're supposed to do. And that's a
Yeah,
drastic shift.
drastic. Drastic because, when people can find their inner presence of their authentic self and be that, then the world opens up and the business would actually be better off because you're having someone show up who gets to be themselves, right?
Right. Mhm.
That's huge.
Well, it's used and then it changes something else. Now motivation is much higher because people feel inspired, they feel congruent with who they are, and there's an acceptance in the corporation or the business wherever they work for that. Now, in the past, any type of differences has always led to formal and informal repercussions against a lot of people, like how you dressed or how your hair was styled. Don't be too flamboyant. And it's amazing how this has changed because we're now being forced to peel back all the dressing and see the person for who they are. And I can give you an example of something that I've done. This is on my website, Cleveland Consulting Group. There's a video I talked about this same thing. And it's an exercise that I tell people is if you want to change your relationship with your spouse or your children, and I always start there, especially with high-powered executives, every night for 30 days, I want you to go home and each one of your family members, you look them in the eyes with soft eyes, not the stern eyes that you use looking at a balance sheet, but soft eyes of just seeing and appreciating them for who they are in the moment. Almost inevitably, everybody, at least half of the family, will either walk away or say, "What are you looking at?" And their response has to be, "I'm looking at you and I need to do this more often." And I tell them at the end of 7 days, they'll be waiting to see, are you doing it? Are you going to continue to do it? Because we all need to be seen. And suddenly we bring humanity back into our family dynamics. And some of the CEOs I worked with have actually incorporated that into their business work where they pause now. I call it pause, reflect, choose. And they pause and actually take a moment to actually see the person instead of coming back with these rapid fire, precise directives and all sorts of things. And the results have been is motivation's gone up. People want to work, they want to engage. And that's true for any human being. We all need to be seen and we all need to be heard. And this changes that. And I'm seeing more and more of that happening everywhere I go.
Wow, I really, really love that. That is very empowering. The other thing that goes along with that is the ability to express your feelings and being heard, as you said. But that's what you're telling me. But the same token, that's not an easy task.
No.
And especially with men,
Mhm.
it's not easy to listen to feelings and emotions because at work, that's not how you operate, right? So, how
Correct.
do you incorporate that to take it even a step further with how and what you're able to get to how you feel and to communicate that?
So feeling one of the things that I borrowed a phrase and I can't remember who said this, um, but um, for most men, there's a belief that vulnerability is not a virtue, especially in business. And what I try to work to help people understand is vulnerability is actually a form of presence. Now, if I'm overly vulnerable, I'm going to feel exposed, and that's why we don't like vulnerability. We feel uncomfortable. But if I'm fully present, which means I'm focused, soft eyes, willing to look at you and support you, and just be in my body and acknowledge that I might not feel real comfortable. And I have the right at any time to like shut it off because I already know how to shut vulnerability off. We
Mhm.
just numb out. And so when I have people do that, what they find out is they can expand their capacity to be vulnerable, which is really a way of saying is more open. And so when I work with executives, and a lot of my people from my natural passage program are executives. The biggest result that I can always tell that we've had an impact is the spouses will kind of communicate of how their partner is so different. They act like, because I teach active listening and what that really looks like and how to do it in a way that's not a strategic movement, but an actual process of engaging and being present with each other. And that's a lot of what I do working with executives, whether it's teams or individuals. Pardon me. And in my men's program, same thing.
That is so important. That is, oh my gosh, to teach, like you say, the communication part, to really be heard and not be defensive and not be whining and not be angry. No, depending on who is talking, but to be heard and
Mm-hmm.
understood. That's gosh, that's phenomenal.
Um, excuse me. So, what ends up happening is that people, the more present they are, it's contagious. Their family members, their executives become more present. And that doesn't mean vulnerable, it means more open, more receptive. And that's the thing that a lot of people come back to me and say is a year later, I can't believe what we were compared to what we do now. I can't believe how we have conversations versus what we used to do, because we would talk at each other, and now we talk with each other. And when they understand that, then they begin to realize really what presence is. It's being comfortable in your own body, not needing a facade of a role, a title, or something else. It's being fully comfortable and engaging with the people. If you have a title, it's already clear who's the boss. So you don't have to overly use it. But if you are the boss and it's somebody you can inspire by being fully present and supportive, suddenly people want to work for you.
So then what you're telling me, and when you're working with the executives, that then you're also it's reflecting at home, right? The spouse or the partner is a lot happier, and then the family is a lot happier. So if you're teaching, I mean, let me ask you this: are most of the executives you work with men?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, I work with some women, but I work up at mostly at the upper levels, so you don't have as many women per se. And then overseas, I did a lot of work in Dubai and places like that, and so the men are more prominent at the top. But I've worked with women who have the same thing, because unfortunately the rules of success for a lot of women is to mimic the behavior of men,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not necessary.
Yeah, I see that completely, and that would make a lot of sense because of the male energy. You know, there are women that when they are leaders or they project exactly that that's how they have to act and be a very masculine energy, and that's you're right. You want the feminine energy has her own power that she can convey. But I'll tell you one of the things, and I'm going to really spell this out in my perception of what I've experienced is that men are, it just makes them really uncomfortable to talk in feelings.
Well, it's true. I mean, because most men, and myself included, were not taught how to engage around emotions or feelings. Um, if you were struggling, you were told to go figure it out, go work it out. Often phrases like "put your big boy pants on," and society really reinforced that heavily. But that's where I'm seeing a big difference. I'm seeing new CEOs coming in; they're much younger, because the era most people my age, CEOs, have already retired. And so we have a new generation coming in who is realizing they have to be more engaged, more relational. It doesn't mean they abdicate their authority as the CEO or whatever it is, but it means there's a variety of ways to use authority that is very engaging and supportive. And they're realizing that they need to do more of that. Now, the way I describe it, because my prior career years ago, almost 40 years ago, I specialized in a lot of turnarounds of failing organizations. And that's when you need a command and control, because somebody's got to tell them how the hell to save the place because it's dying. But that can only last so long. So you guide them out of it. And then after you do that, then you have to restabilize the culture and the business into one that says, okay, now that we have good standards and we're safe again, we're solvent, we move forward of how do we as a whole organization perpetuate this success and what kind of culture do we build. And it's the same thing that's happening right now. It's just faster. Cultures are changing so quickly. COVID changed the whole global picture of how we do business and how we're going to be in relationship. So I look at it right now as we're probably in a cultural revolution. We call it the cultural wars by what's happening in our country with the politics. But I think it's a cultural revolution because cultural revolution leads to massive divisiveness until a new unified center is created. And that's happening. So the news likes to talk about the destruction or the disruptions. But if you look at the larger picture, just a lot of positive things are happening. More people are engaging in democracy and participating in our country. And I think the impact that's going to be is we're going to be something brand new over the next 5, 10 years.
Probably so. Probably so. Which to participate and is in our democracy is very important. But let's when you're talking about the executives and the changes with COVID, I know myself as an entrepreneur and being a mother of 4 children and being around other entrepreneurs or therapists or whatever they're doing, COVID really changed everyone, right? It's not just the executives, as you're saying. And I
Change
want to
everybody.
acknowledge that in the world and watching the younger generation say, I'm not going to play this anymore. I'm not going to play safe for 30 years in a corporation. I'm going to go do something. And I actually have a personal situation with one of my kids who is brilliant, came into the world, and I could see his gifts of being a scientist and helping, in that path to do research and to help, in the biology field. And yet he was working in a corporation. And it's like, well, I got this job, this has been 15 years ago, and I'm just going to do this for the rest of my life, right? It's like, no. And he's watching the world change. And it's like, no, I'm going to I've been very responsible, and I've in the financial world of understanding finances and saving and investing, and I'm set. I don't need to keep going after, well, I got to do more, I got to do more, I got to do more. I'm going to be happy where I'm at, and now I'm going to go participate in what the science world, and not worrying about every day you got to make more money, got to make more money. So I mean, that was, what you're saying is huge, to watch, the youth being able to do that, or people that are even my age that are looking at their marriage after so many years of trying to improve it and to change it and say, it's not getting any better, I'm going to get a divorce.
Yep.
Here you're in your 60s and it's like, going to change life. So the extreme of, on a personal level or in business or entrepreneur, it's changed. Actually, it has changed.
True.
And I see that for the good,
I
as
agree
you're
because
saying.
it ties back to we're participating in our own lives more actively than we ever did. So whether you put it into politics as democracy or people deciding how they want to work, it's the same thing. As we've recognized we have the right to be happy.
We do. We really, really do. And I could go on with other people that have done the same, right? Of to be happy and break away from the norm of no, I have to have this. I have a really good job, and I have to stay here because this is what I have to do to know I'm going to go lead a different path of spirituality to see what opens up for me. It doesn't mean you're going to stay on that path. It means that you're going to explore and you're
Yeah,
going to be more who you are and quit worrying about making everybody else happy because you don't want to hurt feelings and try to go on your own path. And it
no
takes a
doubt.
lot of courage to do it. A
Yeah,
lot of
and
courage.
the interesting part is this group seems to be the younger group seems to be we would say that they're too rebellious, but the truth is they're more courageous.
Yeah, it is courage. It
Yeah.
is absolutely courage. Exactly. And you are so gifted at what you do, in bringing the therapy of Gestalt, because you definitely, I mean, you have studied this for a long time and you have this natural ability to communicate. And I know that you've done your own work, and I know that it's a continual thing. I get it. I absolutely get it. But to work with even more entrepreneurs in business, you don't talk about doing that, but do you do that?
Well, I work with entrepreneurs. Actually, I work from anywhere from startup startup businesses to um, um, $5-10 billion corporations. And the real issue is how does this all fit together? And the interesting part about startups is a lot of times startups are they have an idea, but the interest and how to make money and that's their goal. And there's more conversation now about what kind of business do I want to create? How do I want to treat my employees? They think about how do I support them? Example of it is a local small business. He's been around a little bit, a while, but he's been very successful. And he started thinking. We had a conversation. He started thinking about how do I make sure that my employees really understand how much they mean to me. And he started looking at it and realizing a lot of things were happening, inflation, etc. And he was looking at his business model and he started tweaking it and changing it. And the impact of it is he gave everybody a $3 an hour increase, which nobody had any idea he was going to do this. And obviously they were shocked. And he explained to them, I want you to live well and be happy working here and not have to worry about that. So I want you to just know how much I appreciate you, and we will figure this all out and work together, and the business will make enough of a profit, and we all work together. That you wouldn't have heard that kind of conversation 10 years ago.
No.
And this is all voluntarily on his part. He's probably about 45 years old, started his business early in his career and it's built it up. And but the most important thing is this shift of the quality of life of the employees.
We're going to end today's episode with that. That is wonderful because you're talking about getting away from greed, right? Because that is business owners or government, whoever you talk about, it seems to be greed is a problem. It is definitely energy that causes a problem, that there's a lack and there's not enough. And you just talked about a beautiful story of a business owner that gave and wants to open up into that higher energy, because that's really what it's about, is for us to elevate into a higher energy to serve more people in from integrity. And I call love too. I think love is very important, of caring and so forth.
Well, they're
But
tied together. We don't like to talk about it being part of it, but the truth of the matter is the more present we become, the more we allow love to be in our life, which is to express it as well as to receive it. And the more that happens, then the quality of life for everybody goes up. But
it
we've
it does. It
yeah,
does.
but we've said that that's outside of business, and it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be at all.
Right.
Cool.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being a part of today's episode of Real Business Breakthrough. And everyone will have your links that they'll know how to reach you also. And I want to thank everybody for participating, being a part of today's show.
Great. Super.